when we are parents who want to protect our children from any kind of discomfort, they never learn to tolerate frustration. And, Dan Siegel talks about that's really the goal of resilience, is to increase this window to tolerate things like frustration.
Welcome to Mind and Heart. We're going to continue our discussion on resilience and seeing this connection with the cardinal virtue of fortitude. And with me is my guest, Dr. Karen Villa.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's great. and we've got such a great conversation going here, so we want to continue looking at the study, the understanding, all the different aspects of resilience. And one part that, when we look at, the understanding of really, what's shame, how does shame play into this and into the development of a child and the formation of their mind. And
so shame is a very easy parenting tool to use when we are reacting to a situation. And it's kind of a sign we've left our own green zone. So it's something for parents to be very aware of, that if you find yourself using shame, you need to really understand that this really prevents resilience, because God wired us for connection. And if a child feels ashamed, what's at the center of that is a fear of disconnection. So it can really shut down this sense of resilience and is the opposite of the 4 S's. The reason it's so dangerous is because when we deal with the adult population, we see that shame plays such a significant role in so many disorders like addiction, eating disorders, depression, and even bullying.
Right.
So it's an important thing to avoid when you're parenting. Right. You think shaming your children into behaving in the right way would be effective, but it's the exact opposite of that. Some people call it the master emotion, because children will do anything to not feel ashamed. Yeah. And they really get into their no brain, and they get very shut down, and they cannot engage with the world. So it's just kind of a cautionary note to be very careful of that one.
And I'm sure that, and I think the good news maybe for parents to understand that, if you've done it, you haven't ruined your children,
Right.
Because that's the thing, is the brain we're talking about resilience here, right?
Right. And
so the brain can be reconnected. So I think that's encouraging, but it's important.
Children are themselves very resilient,
right.
And we want to build resilience, and we want to understand that this is going to undermine it. But, it's the beauty of everything. There's always repair, there's always reconciliation and re-engagement, but you have to recognize it as a problem.
Right, and I think that's why I think it's very important to address this and, to be honest with yourself and to see if that's something that you can do. I mean, it's easy to do it a teacher could do it, as an adult, it's just, so it's very...
Such a blow to their self-worth.
Right.
And children are very forgiving. They're naturally forgiving. So if you have a situation where you are not in the green zone with your child, when you get back in the green zone, you can really discuss that with them. And if I scared you, or if I gave you the message that I don't love you, I'm sorry for that, and what would help you to feel, more safe again.
Right. But it's good. But thank you for bringing that up. And I was just kind of in thinking about that. So as you were talking, I thought I can hear parents saying, "Are you in my room right now? I just did that. It's okay."
Yeah, we've all made those mistakes, myself included.
Right. Well, continue on. Then we talk about praise.
So at the other end of the continuum, excessive praise can present a problem, because children will feel like they have to perform in order to please their parents, and that can really shut them down from, I just need to practice and build skills and get better at this, and because I feel good about that when I do that. So excessive praise can present its own kind of problem.
And that actually, I think oftentimes too, that can follow them into adulthood, where they're always, feeling like they have to please or, in order to be recognized. And,
seeking affirmation rather than building substance kind of is the difference between those two.
Right.
And again, it goes back to parents think if they just shower their children with praise, they're going to have enough self-worth to go out into the world. Well, that gaining of that self-worth comes from this doing, this practicing, this doing, this mastering the challenges of learning and everyday life.
Now, early on we had referenced mindset, so maybe
which is different than mindsight.
Sight. Yes, right.
So even here in our area, the Detroit Public Schools use these ideas of mindset in their education system, and the idea is that you are facilitating a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset can come from something like excessive praise, where you think you have to be perfect in order to be loved. But what we want to facilitate with resilience is this idea you're growing. And you're going to make some mistakes, you're going to get some things right, but you're going to have successes too. And we want you to be focused on growing. So Carol Dweck wrote this book called Mindset, and again, she gives so many examples of people who have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And with a fixed mindset, you really see them shutting down if there's a mistake or if there's some kind of failure, and kind of avoiding going back out into the world. With a growth mindset, a child would feel like, oh, well, I didn't get that right the first time. I can practice and get it right the next time. And this is really how people, again, move towards success in young adulthood and beyond. So a growth mindset facilitates a sense of optimism in kids.
Okay.
And, there are a lot of pessimistic young people out there, unfortunately.
So when we talk about optimism, what's is like an example or obviously when you say pessimism, I can't get it, but because I see, it's interesting because it's, we have the theological virtue of hope, where we're looking towards this eternal thing, and we're
always growing towards eternity.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the idea, right?
Yeah, exactly. So here, when we talk about optimism, obviously we're always looking at these things from a Christian perspective, but with what would you say, if we were talking about like with an optimism that we want to encourage them with the mindset, are there any examples or something that...
Yeah, I think a good example is how children learn to approach their studying.
Okay.
So, they can approach it in a very unrealistic way, say for a test. I don't have to study, I'm going to do just fine, would be really unrealistic, right?
Right.
I don't have to turn in my assignments and I'm still going to get a good grade. I am amazed how often I see this one, that parents are communicating even the basic expectation that you turn in your assignments. Like they have to negotiate that. So that's very unrealistic. I don't need to turn in my assignments or study in order to do well. A pessimistic view would be, I always fail, so there's no point to me studying. There's no point to me even trying. And if parents see this, they can pretty much suspect that their children are in that no-brain state, and they want to kind of turn up the volume on that. An optimistic perspective is, I can put effort into my studies, and I can ask for help when I need it, and I feel confident that I'll be prepared for the test. So even a test is a kind of adversity, isn't it?
Right, it's true. You go into a fear and trembling, so yeah. Right.
So these are, ordinary, everyday ways that children are dealing with adversity. And if they enter it with this sense of optimism, effort, practice, I feel good when I do well, it's just all going to go so much better, and it's going to build that strength for facing the elements of life.
Yeah, and I even think what you said there, that the importance of understanding there is the sense of growth, and it's not like, I can't do it, so I'm never going to go back to it. No, I'm going to go. It's almost like something like rock climbing, or hike. You start out, and you're like, I'm going to get it done, or learning a new skill, or for me, perfecting free throw shooting, the shot,
Yes, you are a basketball
to make
player.
10 in a row, right?
Ah,
And
awesome.
another thing that you and I have often talked about too is, about boredom and frustration. So,
Right. So, parents want to see negative emotion as, again, this opportunity to teach balance and resilience. And the two that are so missing today because of this information age, this generation being raised on the internet, us being so overprotective and focusing on safety. Kids are so overstimulated, they don't know how to be bored anymore. And curiosity comes from boredom.
Right.
And it's so different. When we were raised, if we were bored and we said that to our parents, we would get a chore.
Yeah, exactly.
So you knew something unpleasant was coming
Right.
if you didn't handle your boredom. And there's such an incredible low tolerance for boredom these days. I've had kids in my office saying, I can't do that because it's too boring. They just want to be entertained and
Right.
overstimulated. And, if you even watch the course of movies these days, they're only 90 minutes instead of 120 minutes because nobody can maintain attention for that long anymore.
Right.
So it is important to specifically pull out boredom and make provision for it.
Yeah, it's so important. I can remember, I remember in my teaching, so this goes back 30 years. When I was teaching a class, and I had probably one of the smartest students. Yeah, sometimes you have kids and they're just really, really bright. And this girl was really, so much so that when I had to read a book to the class, this is 4th grade, she was a much better oral reader than I was. So I let her read to the class,
Oh, okay.
But her mom did the greatest service to her, where she came to me at the beginning of the year because her mom knew that's how bright she was. She said, Sister, I just want you to know that your job is to teach this whole class. My child happens to be in your class. And it's not your responsibility to keep her entertained and active the whole time. If you finish a lesson and she gets done first, then she said if she's so smart, she'll find something else to do.
Right.
And so what her mom had taught her, and it's true, I would watch her. And as soon as she turned in her test, she'd pull out a book, she'd read, she'd go over to the book or go over and get a game and play it. She found something to do, or she'd just sit there until we were finished. But there was never an attitude or whatever. But that,
like you should entertain me. You should figure this
exactly.
out for me.
And her mom was like, "It's not your job to do that." It's And I thought, gosh, that's such a great lesson to learn and to teach. It's good parenting. And it was a relief to me because I would have normally thought, oh gosh, I got to keep her busy. But
she's going to get out of the green zone if she's bored.
Yeah.
That's what's happening with these young people.
Right.
So I think I mentioned to you, there's this other young woman, her name is Tara Westover, wrote this book, Educated. And her parents were Mormon, and so they didn't believe in things like education. So she did not go to school her whole young life until she was 17. She wanted to go to college. But what was positive about that experience, and I think what served her when she went to college, and now she has her PhD, I think, in intellectual history, but what served her when she went off to college was that she had been bored enough, had the freedom to explore and be curious. So when she did arrive at college, she had this curious mind to want to master something and master the information. And I think there is a word of advice in that for us, that fostering that boredom and that curiosity and that passion for figuring something out is getting more and more lost in this day and age of safetyism and overstimulation.
And it's so important. And even even like the other part, like you mentioned too, is like frustration. There's something to putting something together. I mean,
Right.
Even think about it. Used to be you build like a model airplane or something to glue all that together. I don't know if I could even do it these days, but to work through that difficulty is just as.
And you think about the amount of frustration that's embedded in learning any new task, that has to be modulated and managed. And, again, that's where mindset comes in. Oh, I'm frustrated. What can I do to manage that? Well, maybe walk away for a few minutes and come back to it. Maybe take a few deep breaths and calm down so that I can enter back into the difficulty of this. But when we are parents who want to protect our children from any kind of discomfort, they never learn to tolerate frustration. And, Dan Siegel talks about that's really the goal of resilience, is to increase this window to tolerate things like frustration. Our window is so narrow, and you want to think about building skills that increases that window so that there's a wider range to tolerate all kinds of challenges.
So life. So when I reference that parent in the example, kind of like modeling what it is, what about like agency and modeling? You kind of to talk about that a little bit.
So this is an older psychological idea that comes from Albert Bandura. He was an early developmentalist, but it's again embedded into this new science of resilience that we're finding, that you want to be able to foster in children that they are their own agents in the world. That and I would ask parents to note that this is about action, right? I can go out into the world and I can do things that help me out, and I can take on these challenges. When children are engaged in all this passive activity and they're so protected, they have no sense of their own agency, right? I can go out and I can do this. And that's something that, again, this mindset that parents want to foster and they also want to expect. But really, it starts with how they model resilience, how they model their sense of agency in daily life. So any parent out there, any teacher knows that I'm entering the day and there's going to be difficulty. And am I going to handle it in this reactive way or in this responsive way? When you handle it in a reactive way, not only are you not modeling resilience, but you are pulling on those survival thinking structures rather than those higher order learning structures that come from the upstairs brain.
And so to kind of bring all this amazing content and things, when we look at living, the virtues and understanding the importance of really educating children in virtue and in the language, and but it also applies even to us as adults.
Oh, absolutely.
Because again, we need to show that we need to be the witnesses, and it's the virtues that are related to fortitude, patience, that comes so important. And
that's the frustration tolerance, right?
Right.
When you tolerate frustration, well, you are a patient person.
And then we have perseverance and industriousness. Really, that's kind of like the stick to it and
work ethic, right? I can put effort into things and work hard. Yeah.
And then even the other ones that kind of are connected to this is magnanimity, which when we where I would bring it in is when we talk about being large-souled or you see it. But if you have this resilience in you and this confidence, that we talked about in building it, then you can approach life and these situations where you have a confidence that you're doing this ultimately for God, and that's the purpose. But
and magnanimity that takes this ability to step out, taking risk.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? Totally.
I'm willing to take risk and say yes and deal with whatever comes along.
And it's also how it all is so connected to me is just, well, obviously we're not surprised because God is the creator of all things.
Right.
We're made in His image and likeness, and when we see that the science, reveals the truth in all of this, and to bring it together.
Interpersonal neurobiology was that. It was the not just from the decade of the brain, but many fields, medicine, anthropology, sociology. It was all of these fields merging together, and having kind of these parallel, integrated findings that were supporting one another.
Yeah, I'd love to sit in one of their conversations and say, okay, we've got this,
Yeah.
the whole part of our spiritual, moral life, if you bring that in, that. So I think it's encouraging. I mean, there's so much in this, that we can learn as educators, as parents, and the importance of helping young people, even ourselves, to cultivate. And they even use the word here, how to cultivate courage and
curiosity and
right.
resilience.
And for us, we want to cultivate, practice these virtues, to form these habits to help us to be more integrated, to have the healthy mind, a healthy heart, and really ultimately, to become the person God's created us to be. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and to share, your passion, your field of study, your experience as a mom and as a counselor. And I look forward to more conversations. And if there's anything you'd like to say yourself to kind of...
Well, I'm happy to be here, and I want to thank you for caring about the whole person of children and integrating this into education. It is a unique and wonderful thing that, is going to help children grow up well in the midst of this epidemic of fragility. Right. So thank you.
Yeah.